Hey friend, I'm Robin May, and a few of the professional hats that I wear includes being a transformational speaker, a life coach, and a licensed therapist. And personally, well, I'm a wife, a mommy to 3 girls, and a pastor's wife, just to name a few. Girl, I'm over here doing all the things while trying to stay in shape and keep my skin clear. But the truth is, I don't want to be known for being busy. I think that's a scheme that somebody set up. No, I want to be known for living a life that is in perfect alignment with what God intended. And I want to help you do the same. So it's with that in mind, I'd like to welcome you right here to Intentional Conversations with Robin May and friends. Over here, we're creating a safe space to have real conversations with real women on real topics. This is a judgment-free zone where we can be vulnerable and honest and curious about our lives so that we can elevate not just what we do, but who we are. So if any of that resonates with you, again, welcome to our safe space. This is Intentional Conversations with Robin May and friends. Hey sis, one more thing before we get started. Listen, a few years ago, I started asking women to define what happiness means to them. And when I tell you, I was shocked how hard it was for women to put into words their happiness. And the truth is, I could relate to it, girl. Life can sometimes get so crazy that it's hard to be clear on what happiness looks like and feels like to you. And so with that in mind, I created the absolutely free 5-day Define Your Happy Challenge. I am on a mission to help 1,000 women define their happy. So if you're ready to get clear about what makes you happy, head on over to defineyourhappy.com. Okay, that's it for real now, y'all. Let's get started with this week's episode. Hey girl, this is Robin, and listen, I wanted to get you all the way caught up in case you missed part 1 of this conversation. This is actually part 2 of my conversation with Nikki Washington, the author of Unplanned Perfection. Girl, in part 1, we talked about Nikki's childhood and how her childhood experiences continue to shape her life, her story, and her journey. Girl, your childhood experiences have done the same. We talked about several of these traumatic experiences that Nikki had and how that began to fuel her relationship with others and her relationship with God. She talked about how she had this not good enough idea or mindset around her relationship with God. Girl, she tells this compelling story of her relationship with her father and how that began to undergird this idea that she wasn't enough. We even talked about her style. Nikki is, in my opinion, a style icon. And so we talked about her style and how that was her voice, how she used her style to communicate what she felt about herself. All of that, girl, was part 1 of this conversation. So if you missed it, make sure you go check it out. Girl, in part 2, we're getting into the good stuff, honey. We're talking about her love life. We are going there. And so I cannot wait for you to catch this episode. Now, listen, as you are listening, I want you to listen through the lens of your own story. I want you to apply her takeaways and her ahas to your life so that you can have your own breakthrough. Okay, that's it, girl. Let's go ahead and dive into part 2 of this conversation. Let's go deep again. So you share in the book, you say this in the book. Listen to this. You say, I still dealt internally with the doubt and anxiety. I just leaned more on my family. This is a pretty long snippet, so go with me. I just leaned on my family to soothe me when I felt overwhelmed. I learned how to disassociate at a high level. To this day, it's something that comes very natural for me. If I had $1 for every time someone told me how easy or painless I make something look, I'd be a very rich woman. I could be at the end of my rope. No one would know. It's a survival mechanism that has gotten me through some very traumatic times, but it's also left me pretty lonely because most times no one knows how deep something is cutting me but me. And so you go on to say this sick dismissal of that traumatic experience. This sick dismissal didn't allow me to fully acknowledge what I was going through. The impact was very evident in my everyday life, but I didn't fully acknowledge it until years later. Tell me about that. So the sick dismissal and how you didn't allow yourself to go through it.
Yeah, I didn't. I mean years and years. And so, and again, I felt it, and it felt like everyone could see it. Like it was, I felt very shameful. I felt very like I just wanted to hide, and I was tiptoeing through life like, do you see it? Can you like?
Because it seemed like it was this billboard,
like on glass, scarlet letter.
Yeah, scarlet letter,
like on your shirt, you know, and everyone can see it. And I'm just trying to, and I'm like relieved when I realized like you don't know, you can't tell. But I also wasn't allowing myself to feel like the pain from it, and I think I falsely convinced myself that meant I was healed from it, or that I wasn't impacted, you know, because I wasn't allowing myself to, like, I wasn't in turmoil about it. So again, it's the story of you getting in a fight in third grade. It's like, why would I bring that up? Like,
that's why
would I talk to my therapist about that?
Wait, because wait a minute, y'all. When I read the book,
this is what she asking me.
I said, have you brought any, not just all these traumatic, I said, have you talked to your therapist? What? Why would I bring that up?
For what? I'm paying you per hour. Why would I bring up things that don't matter? I mean,
and I was literally like, Nick. But I think so many of us can relate to it again when we think about putting whatever our stuff is on the shelf. And if we are able to function at some level of normalcy, and we just have our stuff, like, and we can justify our dysfunction, and we can say, I just don't fool with folk. When they do all that drama stuff, I just don't fool with them. We can play down our traumatic response. Somebody said something the other day that was, one of my clients said this to me, and I was like, girl, you done read me for Phil. And I just kept on going, like, she probably looking at this podcast. Hey, girl, she said this, and she was talking about how I consider myself an ambivert. I like to be by myself. I can turn on in public, but I get fueled by being by myself. And so she was talking about that for herself too. And she said, but you know, I understand it's a traumatic response for me because I have only found safety with myself. I said, well, sis, when you say that next time, act like your therapist taught you that, right? But she's saying this natural tendency of hers just to be by herself. She realized it looks fine to other people, but it's a trauma response. And so you're saying how you didn't even recognize how much that was still impacting you in all the situations, because that one traumatic event, Nikki lays out several traumatic events, including, and I don't mention this in my notes, but including your house, y'all losing your house to a fire and having to sit there and watch this, so many different experiences. And so, all right, so we've talked about so much. I want to keep going. I'm going to skip over how you and Mark went to jail. I ain't gonna work. I know her family, her brothers, so I'm saying Mark's so cavalier, but I ain't gonna talk about how you and Mark went to jail.
Locked up, honey.
Okay. You can't get me. How's the song? Okay, don't do it.
Don't. Okay. If you don't know it, if you can't commit to it,
I don't know it.
Don't give it.
But Mark and Nikki went to jail. We're gonna skip over that. Let's see what we're gonna. Okay, I think we want to get on down to this part right here. This is a question because we're about to turn the corner into your love life. Oh, we didn't talk about whether or not you're married or single. Hey, girl.
Hey, girl. Very much unmarried and single. Friends.
Find you.
I'm on my man.
Friends. We're on the lookout.
On the lookout. So yes,
I am on the lookout. So if you had to describe your love life in a 6-word sentence, what would the sentence be?
It is what I think I deserve. Is that 6 words?
What I think.
What I think. It's what I think I deserve.
Yes, that's your.
I think the manifestation of my relationships. I go into relationships like waiting, like like waiting for them to realize I'm not worthy of them being here. And then the relationship plays out with me kind of tiptoeing through experiences and showing up a shell of myself in order not to, make that thing happen faster, which I feel like they all leave when they realize you're not good enough, right? Everybody does. And so my love life, it really was a manifestation of that. I believe
Did you just pause and say was
different now, friends? Okay,
because you just said it was,
baby. It was.
Ooh, Nikki.
It is not what I believe anymore. But when I look at those like those pivotal relationships, I'm like, it's showing up that way because like that's what I believe I deserve.
My God. So you just said something that you and I have talked about a lot, but I want you to give that sentence again. You said, I you had this undercurrent, this belief system that once they discover that you're not enough, they all leave. And you're not just talking about romantic, you mean relationships, period, that once somebody sees their blindfold is removed, they leave. And so because you had that belief system, you were holding your breath in relationships, and it was almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yes. Just tiptoeing, like, and just, are they going to call it a day? Okay. And you take a small sigh of relief, but it's temporary. And when things come up, relationship disputes, or just the ebbs and flows, when it's ebbing, you're like, this is because, and if it ever comes back, it's like, okay, it's not yet kind of a thing.
Not yet. Like, it's gonna happen, but not yet.
It's going to happen. It always happens.
Yeah.
It's just a win.
So one day we were talking, and because most of my single friends say that I'm very difficult to deal with on this relationship journey.
Y'all, do they know?
They don't know.
She don't like nobody. So if you out here in these streets, don't run your man past Robin May, okay?
My girlfriend,
he gonna run right out the door.
My girlfriend say that I'll be like, his name starts with a J.
I don't like that. I mean,
I don't like J.
I'm like, I actually went on a nice date. I don't like this. This is feeling like, what do you like? Okay, me at home.
Because it is so difficult. It's just so hard for me. But I mentioned that because when you just said you feel like eventually they're going to leave, you and I would have, I would trigger you a lot because I would say language like, let's just go ahead and pull the Band-Aid off. Let's get through the niceties. Let's just go there. Yes. Because that's my stuff. I don't like to hold my breath. What is it going to be? And you're like, and Robin,
like, you trying to trigger me. Right? Yes. You're trying to rush me to the trigger. I'm trying to run away from it. And I'm literally trying to tiptoe because that in between feels a little bit better than that. I'm thinking it's going to always lead back to that. But I'm also finding some solace, and I'm trying to tiptoe, trying not to, you like, come on.
Get it over with.
Let's go. Just ask him a question so he can just break your heart right now. Girl.
So I know my clients are like, woo, I get it too. Okay, so I want to ask you this question. How many times would you say you've been in love?
Ooh.
Before you answer, let me see if I can guess. Hold on.
Okay, guess.
Okay, I think I know the number. How many times did you say?
I would say 3 times.
Yes, I would say 3 times.
I would say 3 times. Now, I want to preface it by saying that first time, I don't know that I've allowed myself to reach that level of crazy in love ever again.
I mean, Beyonce. Hey, girl. Yes.
See how you got me singing? I know. It's ridiculous, but absolutely. Honey. That was, and so everyone after that was like, okay, I love you. We doing it. But I'm also in control of myself, okay?
Yeah. But that was that young love. Yes. That was that young love. Yes. And you talk about that a little bit in the book. And what's so powerful about that is you really give grace to both of y'all because you understand what that dynamic was.
Yeah. It reinforced, and that was damaging for me because it reinforced that belief system. But outside of the belief system, like, we were just young, immature, trying to figure it out with each other, and it's just like not giving each other grace. Yeah. I mean, it was a whole bowl of crazy.
So that was that. And so then you did get married 9 years ago. Am I right?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Awesome.
9 years ago. How long were you married before y'all were divorced?
Divorced. So we got divorced in 2018. So we were married 4 years.
Y'all were married 4 years. Okay.
You know.
So we go through this journey, or you go through. You see how I put myself? Did you see how I say we go through this journey?
With us. So friends, we were not all married.
We were not all married together. So you go through this journey, and it was pretty challenging. And one of the beautiful things about the book is that you tell the story even of that traumatic experience. And I am reading it, watching you try to be very careful about how you tell the story. So I want to read something that she put in the book about the journey of her marriage and divorce. And this is a pretty long snippet as well. So you're talking a little bit about what you began to realize and what you may have seen in the beginning. Okay. So you say, they say that hindsight is 20/20. If I'm completely honest, the yield signs were present at the first date. Little subtleties and overstepping of boundaries that were evident in not only the interaction with me, but with others. I brushed off so much early on as personality differences, not recognizing how those same things would blossom in time. Fundamentally, I knew I wanted to be how I wanted to be treated. I just had no idea what that looked like. So I didn't know it shouldn't feel how it was feeling. Again, this past undercurrent of your life experience. I hadn't experienced a healthy connection yet. I was just winging it. I truly thought true love showed up in the fight or in my shrinking back. That is what I experienced in my relationships up until that point. So I didn't think it was odd that everything involving this new relationship required more work than I had imagined, more work than people around me seemed to have to do. Again, that same theme of comparison, especially if that work led to the outcome that I had imagined a long time ago. It wasn't conscious anymore. Subconsciously, I was still tying my worth to an outcome. Being so willing to sacrifice even myself to attain an end would cost me deeply. Baby, are you proud of you?
Girl, I said I did it.
Girl, so you said being so willing to sacrifice even myself to attain an end would cost me deeply. You talked about seeing some things in the beginning. Talk to me a little bit about that.
By the time I met my ex-husband, I was coming off the heels of my first love, and that being a failure in my eyes, in my experience. I was still experiencing it as a failure. And then my dad passed away in that interim as well. And that was just so devastating to me. And I just remember feeling like I want to win. I need a win. Like I need something to work out for me. I was feeling emotionally like just drained. Like I can't continue at this rate. And so I hyper focused on what a win would look like. And around that time, my friends are getting married, my friends are having babies, and I was more focused on the end and then inserting somebody into that space versus who's the person that God has, for me? Like, what are the characteristics? What do I need to thrive in love? What does he need, kind of a thing? And so I was willing to sacrifice. Like, I was willing to kind of, go in the corner, keep my mouth shut, tiptoe, eggshell it, if it meant that I could finally experience
this plan that you had outlined and you could win. Oh, girl, it's so, so, so good. In another snippet of the book, you say this. When talking about some of the experiences that you had in the marriage, you said the shame kept me from talking about it to other people who could have given me a clearer perspective, people who would have encouraged me to pause and take a deeper look. I own that. But shame has a way of driving you into isolation. And so, I say a lot of times that God never intended us for Isolation Island. But at the same time, you hear messaging that says, protect your marriage and don't talk about it. And so you found yourself, I'm assuming, in this quandary trying to do what you've heard even the preachers say, but then dealing with this stuff. How did you finally become to reconcile that?
And so I think the thing that really lit the whole situation, shame was my natural disposition anyway. And so when I'm looking at the close people around me, I'm not finding anybody that I'm relating to that at least outwardly are having any kind of the same. So I'm not talking to anyone really about it. And I'm coming up with my own conclusions, which are distorted. And so it's like, work harder, do what's asked of you, do this, do this, do this. And I feel like I keep failing, which is also yes. Like don't ruffle the feathers and this and this. And when you're failing consistently, it's more shame, which leads you to retreat even more.
It's just this perpetual cycle.
It's a perpetual cycle of it over and over again. And then so desperately feeling like if I could just do this more, then I can still, save it.
Yeah. So as you go through this journey, it felt very public for you when you realized that it's going to end in divorce.
Yes.
And it felt very public. And you know what's interesting, when you were talking earlier, we were talking about the Scarlet Letter and how it seemed like everybody sees. One of the things that is the reality is that we're more consumed with our world than other people are. I remember when Lee called off the wedding. I remember when he called off the wedding. And I wasn't wearing my engagement ring, of course, anymore. And at that time I was dancing at church, okay? Because see, the folks, I was dancing at church. I did liturgical dance at church.
Please be clear, because he told us so he caught off the wedding, then I was dancing. It's not
and I remember, Nikki, we went to a big mega church, and I was dancing. And I remember thinking, as I'm doing my liturgical dance, that people are like, she's not wearing her ring anymore. This was not no 18 carat, I don't even know what carats are supposed to be. It wasn't no big ring. But I thought that people were, during praise and worship, were paying attention to the fact that I didn't have my ring on. So I'm saying that to say that we often care more about what's going on in our lives than everybody else does. However, with that said, within the realm of your life or in the realm of our life, people are watching. So it felt like this spotlight was shined on you during this divorce. You already have this shame disposition that's going on that people would never know because you're so darn fly. So they wouldn't know that about you. You don't walk around looking shrunk or retreating. And there was a lot going on within what felt like within friend circles, right? Yes. I'm just kind of laying the foundation with this. So one of the things that I have admired about the journey is that you didn't say much. You were very quiet throughout the journey. You just put your head down and, you weren't doing social media posts. You weren't doing, what do they call things I hate so much? Those sub-tweets. You weren't doing sub-text. You weren't doing any of that. You were trying to be very quiet and just go along. Why was that so important to you?
I don't feel like I was hearing God a lot in that time. I mean, everything just felt very muffled, but I felt very confident that God told me to be quiet. And so I wanted to. So it wasn't like I was over there like,
like you're such a strong woman.
Right. I'm not even bothered at all. Like, there were things that I was bothered about. I'm human, so I wanted to say and do things, but it was very clear to me that I wasn't supposed to. And even moments where I would find myself, it would be like this conviction, like, no, ma'am. And because I wasn't hearing God in other areas, and it was so clear, and because I was so desperate for his healing, his restoration, I needed his peace. I needed our connection. It wasn't worth a post on Instagram. Wasn't worth disconnecting because it was my lifeline. Because
at this point your relationship with God was restoring. You were restoring it, and you were feeling a different connection. So one of the things you said in the book, you talk about how you and I had a little argument, and how
indeed
because one time you were saying during our mini event sessions, and you were saying Why do I have to be the one? Why do I have to be the one? Why everybody else can say something? Why do I have to be the one that was quiet? And I said to you, you don't have to be. So you don't have to be quiet. You absolutely can say something, but you're the one who said that God told you to be quiet. So if you choose to say something, you're just, because that's the rawness of our decisions. If you decide, I feel God said this, but I'm just going to do something different, you can. So Nikki, you go on to say this. After that conversation, you say this: I felt such a huge shift in my life, in my relationship with God at this point, not just from that conversation, but just period. I felt a huge release of God's grace over me. I don't think I had ever felt like I was walking in God's grace until this point. I had 2 Corinthians 12:9 written across my mirror, and I would recite it every day. My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. I was reading that in a new way, that in order for God's power to be perfect in our lives and his grace sufficient, it required our vulnerability and weakness. Talk to me about that moment for you.
Man, I mean, that time in my life was just, I had just never, that was just such a turning point with my relationship with God. Because before then, we were on that roller coaster, right? I love you, hate you, love you, hate you. You're doing what I want you to do.
Yes.
Like, you're not doing anything for me. And I mean,
Yes.
and just
You've
back
abandoned
and
me,
forth,
God.
right? Like,
Yes.
why? I mean, just back and forth, back and forth. And I realized I didn't have I didn't have the luxury of that.
Yes.
Like, I needed it here consistently in order to survive. I mean, at that point, I'm pregnant and I have a 1-year-old. I am unemployed. I don't have a job. I don't have a car. I don't know what tomorrow equals, let alone next month, let alone when my baby gets here. And so I leaned in so hard to my relationship with God, and I felt like for the first time, he was actually leaning into me. And that was such a different perspective. Wow. Because my view of him before had been, you're not good enough. You know, you're not good enough. You're not worthy. Like, okay, dance, perform. Like, boo, you know, like Apollo kicking her off the stage kind of a thing. And I viewed his perception of me as different. And I actually felt like loved and accepted by God. And so I changed my perspective too about how I wanted to show up. And it wasn't about posting or going tit for tat. It was about like how I, at the end of the story, you know, how I want the story told about me, not about nobody else, but how I want the story told about me, how I want God to view me during this process, and how much I needed his presence to stay with me. I couldn't afford to be doing all this and all that and tiptoe out of his grace, because that was the only way I was sustaining, you know? And so I made a choice, not that it wasn't tempting, but I made a choice based off of what I needed.
And what you were receiving
and what
from
I was receiving
him.
Back.
Nikki, so powerful. So I want you to make sure you get Unplanned Perfection, because Nikki really goes through the journey of how you even got to this point, like how she got to the point of recognizing she was desperately needing God. And she really goes into great detail. It's such a beautiful, beautiful journey. And what is so beautiful about it is that you're still on the journey. It's not like you got divorced and then you met your knight in shining armor. You're still on the journey, right?
Yes. It doesn't, you know, and I think that's the that's the thing. Like, we wanted to be like, okay, scene. Yes. Go skip into the sunset, you know, and it's still a journey with myself. It's still a journey of healing with me, a journey of discovery and self-awareness. It's an ever evolving process. But even in my relationship with God, especially in my relationship with God, because this new view is 5 years.
Yes.
And so I got a whole lot more time in history of the distortedness that I'm still processing through. And so I have a different perspective though, and a different belief system. I think that's the difference. I'm not doing it feeling like I'm not worthy of it. You know, like you know you are now. It's just, you know, making myself believe that.
one of the things I've watched, and tell me, do you feel this? I've watched you rebound quicker when the distortion shows up.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say that you find yourself doing that?
I mean, because self-awareness, like once you know,
yeah.
and I mean, and it's healing. At first, you're like, oh, like
yeah,
get punched in the chest, like, oh, that's me.
Right.
But once you realize it, you can see it. You can see it, you know, and that's power, because then you realize, like, I could talk back to this. Like, I don't have to play this out to the end. I used to play. Once A starts, I'm not stopping till Z. Okay, we about to
give him pointers, and then this happened, and this,
but I'm like, I can pause that at C and go on, come on back, you know. And
I might stay in D for a little bit.
Might stay in D,
but I'm gonna get on back over here to A, because I know the price I'm gonna pay.
And it's not worth it.
It's not worth it to go all the way down there to Z.
Worth it, and then having to do the work. Because I'm gonna have to come back. I can't live as Z.
I can't live, and
I don't have the luxury.
And we don't have the luxury to live as Z. And so recognizing that and that's where relationships come in, having people in your life that can serve as an anchor so that you can come on back, you know, and making sure that you're not having intimate relationship with people who support the distortion or trigger the distortion without recognizing it, you know, because again, we are all doing life together. And so I may trigger it, but then I'll know, wait, that's okay. Never mind. Or when you're in a safe relationship, you can say, most of my closest girlfriends will say, Robin, don't do that. I can't do it today. Right. And so I can say the same. So I think that is a beautiful thing. So we are done. I just want to ask you, what do you want people to get out of your story? When they read the story of Unplanned Perfection, the book is coming out August. What is the date? I was about to pull it. August 27th. Make sure, listen, follow Nikki on Unplanned Perfection on Instagram.
As you should.
DM her and she might give you a little discount. It comes out August 27th. So DM her. What do you hope people get out of your story?
That not to get stuck at the unplanned. And I feel like for so much of my life, it was plan, unplanned, stuck, replay. And that there is hope. There really is hope beyond it not working out. There's hope beyond pain. There's hope beyond disappointment. And if you lean into that, you really can get to where you recognize and understand that this and this and this is because of that, you know, and just to lean into the after and not the disappointment.
I love that. And so I cannot wrap up this podcast without asking you about your superpower. Motherhood is your superpower. So tell us a little bit about Carter and Cadence, their ages, and what motherhood means for you.
They're 5 and 7. And so my son is 7. My daughter is 5. She's 5 going on 15 or is 15.
Yeah, honestly. She argues with the fact that my daughters get into fights with her.
She is 15, but she's technically 5. But they are my world. I mean, you know that they are my lifeline. I think about the hardest times in my life, and they are always that anchor back to out of the dark place, back out of sorrow, back into healing. They are what pushes me like past fear, honestly. When I think about the story I want them to tell of their mother, when I think about them growing up and what they witness of me, it shapes how I show up in life. It really does. But they are my everything.
Motherhood really is your superpower. I think that you have a unique strength and grace and anointing. I mean, all of us are anointed to, once we have children, we know that God has called us to motherhood, but honey, it's your superpower. And I think you do it graciously and beautifully and as an example to so many of us. And so I'm so proud of the woman that you are. Tell everybody how they can get in contact with you so that they can stay connected.
So on Instagram, you can follow me at Unplanned Perfection. On Facebook, you can follow me at Unplanned Perfection, or you can go to my website, unplannedperfectiononline.com.
The book comes out August, tell me again,
August 27th.
27. So make sure you get your copy. Now, this is a special edition. It is not going to be this size. I wish I had an example of the size. So when you get your book, I don't want you to be like, wait, what's the problem?
That's mine, okay?
This is Nikki's copy. But it is Unplanned Perfection, Finding Hope Beyond the Disappointment of Life, Lost in Love. Thank you for being with me.
Thank you for having me.
I love you. We'll see you guys again next time on Intentional Conversations with Robin May and friends. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Intentional Conversations with Robin May and friends. Listen, these conversations are to help you live intentionally, fully engaged, to help you elevate not just what you do, but who you are. And listen, I am committed to being in the trenches with you. If you haven't already, make sure you head on over to youcanlivelife.com/academy. Yes, girl, the Academy doors are open. This is where you get to dive into further conversations on our podcast topics. We get to dive into the trenches of the life course, the course that I have created to help you create the life that you long for. And we get to have monthly office hours where you can ask me any questions you have about all of this. Girl, Life Academy is where we can do life together. So head on over to youcanlivelife.com/academy.